Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Track versus Track. This is our series where we take a classic album, or in some cases an obscure album, not in this particular case, where we take an album, we rank the tracks from our least favorite to favorite. And if you've watched the past couple episodes, we are actually now going in chronological order as the track listings appear. And we are going to assign a number, for example, this particular album has 8 songs. So we'll tell you what it is out of 8. If it's our top 3, we'll hold that until the very end. And with me, as always, is my co-captain and co-conspirator, Jacob Rosdale. And as he appears on my screen, he's in the top left-hand corner. And then we have a special guest today and a huge Boss fan. As a matter of fact, he inspired this particular track versus track, Mr. Jesse Gavin.
Hello, good to be with you.
So how long have you been a Bruce fan, Jesse?
Probably, if I had to pin it down, I would say since like mid high school, although I imagine I was probably introduced to his music even before that. I've got some family, some relatives that are pretty big fans. And then I think I got the first of his back then CDs that I owned in high school, which was probably his first greatest hits, the one from the mid 90s roughly. And then just kind of went from there, picked up the live at Madison Square Garden that he and the E Street Band did back in 99 or 2000, and listened to that pretty extensively. And then it's just kind of growing from there.
Matt?
Yeah, growing up in the 80s, and I've shared this anecdote in other episodes. I had an older sister, and she was obsessed with MTV. And so I was pretty much relegated to what she would watch at the time. And you couldn't avoid songs off of Born in the USA and Tunnel of Love. And so I got to know those songs. And I kind of always associated Bruce Springsteen with that slick 80s production. And I liked them enough, but I wasn't like a huge fan. And it wasn't until probably out of college where, and of course, I knew the song Born to Run just from listening to classic rock radio. But it was probably until out of college, like 05, 06, where I was like getting a little bit of income, and I started, saying, I need to beef up my record collection. I need to get like mandatory essential albums. And of course, you read Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time, or look at any list, and Born to Run is always in like the top 50. Sometimes even in the top 20, top 10. It's just such an album held in high regard. So this was like the first Bruce Springsteen album that I really listened song for song. And, in my opinion, we'll get to this later, there are absolutely no skippers on this. I mean, this is the epitome of a perfect album. I see you
I winced a little, but we'll get to that.
So I was really excited when Jesse
I winced a little, but we'll get to that.
Track versus track, because Jesse and I were friends in college, but we also actually lived in the same town after college. And I remember having several conversations with you about, favorite artists. And I always remember you would put Bruce Springsteen up there, and, doing karaoke together. I think you probably did a couple Springsteen songs. And
potentially there were a lot of misspent Saturday evenings at Patrick's there in Mason City, a former A&W with the square roof and the parking lot that looked like it. But yeah, there was a lot of that. And that's, I think everybody kind of has that evolution, with your favorite artists. And, I went to, or grew up in a town, went to a high school where, the musical choices were not necessarily of the day. Like, obviously we listened to pop radio, and there was a lot of, whatever was happening in the late 90s, early 2000s, but like, we also, a lot of us kind of, very early on adopted and inherited some of our parents' tastes. And so, I went to school with a lot of people that listened to a lot of, Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and John Prine. And, so I guess my tunnel in that era, I don't know if this is an official genre, but I would say that I was most interested in what I would call, Midwestern rock or Rust Belt rock, Springsteen, John Mellencamp, Bob Seger, little bit of Bon Jovi here and there, and then you get into some of the more alternative country influences too, and that's kind of how this started to go. And then obviously the first time I saw Bruce live was in 2009, and obviously that really kicked it off from there. Just made me an even bigger fan than I already was.
I was going to ask you if you had seen him live.
I have seen him twice at this
I was going to ask you
once,
if you had seen him
with the full band
live.
back in 2009 at Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines. And then I also caught him. He did a 4 or 5 track set solo acoustic as part of a campaign event for then President Obama when he was running for re-election in 2012.
Oh.
So I drove down to Ames to see that. And because I was working in news at the time, I was there as a reporter.
Sure.
So I actually plugged my recorder into the tap from the board.
Sure.
And so I still have those recordings, my own personal little bootleg of the 4 or 5 songs that he did that evening. I think it was supposed to be more, but he got delayed by weather. His travel wasn't what they expected it to be, but it was still pretty great as a fan of his.
And Matt, you saw him once?
Yeah, I saw him on the 2012 Wrecking Ball tour
And
in
Matt, you saw
St.
him
Paul.
once?
And funny enough, I got my friend who works from home and has worked from home in the insurance business for well before it became popular to work from home. He scored us like sweet seats, and we actually sat next to Al Franken, the senator at the time. And Al Franken was really into it, man. I mean, he knew every song word for word, and probably knew him way back in like the Saturday Night Live days, when he was writing and Springsteen was a musical guest. But yeah, that was a great tour. The Wrecking Ball album, I think, is criminally underrated too. It's one of my favorite of his more recent ones. I'm not as huge on anything 90s to the present. I like them, and maybe it's just I don't have as much time logged into investing into them, but I really do like that Wrecking Ball album. Jacob, what is your experience with this album or Bruce Springsteen in general?
Well, first off, the closest I've come to seeing him live is meeting Max Weinberg at Wartburg for a John Kerry, I believe, primary event. And maybe
I remember
you were
that.
there. Yeah, that's the closest I've come, and he didn't play drums or anything. I hadn't heard this album before, and I knew you were gonna. I got nervous a little bit when Jesse picked Bruce because I've tried actively for years. It's always felt like something wrong with me that I couldn't get into Bruce Springsteen, specifically the full E Street Band stuff. Because I like a lot of people that are influenced by Springsteen, and a lot of people like. I'm a big Dylan fan, and Springsteen's one of those people. They call him the new Bob Dylan, or they did at the time. And I owned Nebraska when I got that when I moved here. I liked the Devils and Dust. I like his solo acoustic stuff. I've just never been a jam band type of guy, and this album isn't too jammy. I'll say that. That's one thing I was worried about, that it was going to be like long tracks. And Matt and I are going to cover a jam band here fairly soon. But I like this. This did grow on me. I was really scared because I even bought the Essential Springsteen, that 3 CD set, and I could just not get into it. And maybe it's just forcing myself to listen to this nonstop for a week. But, I'll get into why I think my barriers of entry were what they were. But I am now a fan of Born to Run. I will address it at the very beginning. The copy I have is a water-damaged copy that the record store was going to throw away. But I found it this week next to the trash, and it's very playable. The vinyl itself is in great condition. It did have a little bit of... I think I'm going to get sick, though, breathing in the mildew-stained jacket. But apparently, because I tried to order a new copy, there is an anniversary for this record coming in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a feeling you can't buy a new copy of this because big old 5-0 in a couple of years.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that. And I didn't bring those props because sometimes I can bring a bunch of stuff that's not really related to what we're talking about, just because I like to show off. But this is the 30th anniversary of Born to Run. It comes with a book, and it's in one of those long boxes. And I have though for Darkness and The River, like these super deluxe editions. Have you seen these, Jesse?
Yeah, I've got the one for it was not vinyl, it was the CDs for Darkness on the Edge of Town. But I know what you're talking about with they kind of it came in, there was like a fake notebook basically
Yeah.
with a lot of the reproduced pages of Bruce's own handwriting of some of his scribbles of trying to put some of those songs together. So yeah, it really delves into some of those things, and the fact that they've preserved so much of that really speaks to, I think, kind of who Bruce is and who he thought he was going to be, even with some of those records that weren't quite as successful or were kind of before he became so successful.
Now we're not going to be able to see you, Matt, because you're just showing off.
Yeah, this is what you're talking about with the
Yeah.
spiral book in there.
Yeah.
And they did a similar sized one for The River. So I was always like, why have they not done this for arguably his best album? But it sounds like if it's the 50th, maybe they're
That's my
holding out
guess.
like a
Could be.
super deluxe. So,
I guess. Let's get into it, gentlemen. Does anyone want to speak for Thunder Road? Track 1 opens the album.
well, maybe we should let our guest give his. So just to reiterate too, Jesse, I don't know if you caught this. So if it's in your top 3, if you rank Thunder Road in your top 3, you'll just say it's in your top 3, and then you'll disclose where it is in your top 3. But if it's 4 through 8, you can say the ranking that you give Thunder Road.
Sure. Okay.
We'll let
Well,
you start.
I will say that it is in my top 3. This may be my favorite of Bruce's songs. And so obviously it makes a lot of sense. It's in my top 3 for this album alone. I put down a couple of notes when I did a re-listen after we booked this, and just some of the things that I threw down were, it starts off, there's so much of this album is the production is kind of showy, like it tries to show off a little bit. This song, at least in the first half of it, kind of strips a lot of that away. It's a lot more simplistic when it first gets going. For a while, it's really just harmonica, piano, lyrics, and I think that I don't know how much of a conscious choice that was, but what it does in my mind is it really lets the songwriting show itself off. So, when you get this song or a song like this, it you kind of start to delve into some of those classic Springsteen themes of, longing for something better, but not being all that sure it's actually out there, and some escapism, and I think the lyrics themselves, they just jump off the page in a lot of different places, and especially from the very beginning, Screen Door Slams, Mary's Stress Waves, it just puts you right there.
Yeah, very evocative lyrics. I don't want to. I think we're gonna all probably have this one in our top 3, and I think Jesse kind of showed his hand. I'm gonna show mine as well, in the sense that every time I listened to this album, I started it from the beginning because I wanted to hear Thunder Road. I eventually would get to Jungleland, probably, maybe not, but I always had to listen to Thunder Road anytime I either put on the vinyl or I played it on my phone. I think it is a near perfect example of the type of song he does, that young working class versus the world thing. What I will say, and it's a kind of the thing that struck me for the majority of the songs, it misses the catharsis of having a chorus. He doesn't seem to like to write choruses. Would it have killed him to add another "Oh Thunder Road" like a couple minutes in, or like just a little bit before the beginning? Because because when he gets into that part where he's singing about Thunder, and maybe that, no, I think Born to Run is about straddling the car. I can't remember how it goes, but there is kind of a chorus. It's only used once. It wouldn't have killed him to repeat it, but yeah. I liked it. I like You're Not a Beauty, but I Think You're All Right. Or You're Not a Beauty, but hey, it's all right. Yeah. Like, he makes that sound like a compliment. He's got game, this Bruce guy. Look at him. This is my new shtick now. Whenever there's like a kind of a cheesy, but that guy, that's a cool guy. That's a guy who can get away with that line. Matt?
It's the perfect song in my opinion. So this was originally kind of originally designed as a concept album. It's supposed to be pretty much like a 24-hour, starting the morning with this song and then the evening being Jungleland. And so, like you hear that harmonica at the beginning, it just gives you that, it just evokes that morning spirit. It's got that classic crescendo buildup. I mean, it starts very soft, and by the end of the song, it's just rocking, with an amazing bridge in the middle too. Just melodically, chordally, that is just one of my favorite parts. Probably the most unsung part of the song is that bridge. But Roy Bittan is a frickin' rock star. This whole album, and because I'm going to say this over and over again, so I'm just going to get it out of the way right now. Born to Run is not Springsteen's finest moment. Yes, he wrote the songs. Roy Bittan is a freaking genius. That piano arpeggio that he plays at the beginning, he does variations of it throughout, though he never replicates it, and he is the engine of this entire song and this entire album. And I mean, it's just he just blows me away. So I've actually fiddled around with the piano part in this song, because you could do this as just a piano and vocal tune, because there's not really much guitar in it. There's not really that much guitar in any of these songs, actually. Nothing really necessary, anyway, to carry the song. But my gosh, the way Bruce sets lyrics to rhythm, to the music, it's like impossible for me. It's almost like he's rapping, but he's singing, and the way he gets these long syllables and sentences into the frame of a 4/4 measure, it's very difficult for me. But just Roy Bittan being able to follow Springsteen's lyrical, melodic, vocal approach, that in itself is amazing. But it's a top 3 from me. I mean, this is, anybody who wouldn't put this in the top 3 is just being an asshole. I mean, it's a perfect song, and I love it. And it's almost 5 minutes long, and it doesn't feel like it at all. It feels like a 3-minute song.
Yeah, and I think the crescendo you talked about, that build, plays into that doesn't feel as long as it is type of thing. And I'm sure we'll mention a lot of them by name, but you already did with Roy Bittan, the piano player for the E Street Band. And there's a lot of with anything involving Bruce, you kind of have to at some point separate the reality from the mythology, because there is a lot of that with Bruce and E Street. But this is, from this point, aside from a couple of shifts here and there, this is still the formation of the band that stands today. Like, Roy Bittan's still there, Gary Talent is still there, Stevie Van Zandt, this was the first album that he kind of worked on, Max Weinberg, obviously Clarence Clemens passed away a couple years ago, Danny Federici passed away, but for the most part, this was when they really came together. And I'm sure this is something that you guys kind of will touch on through this series as it grows a few more legs. But some of those, to me, the 2 most fascinating categories of albums I think there are somebody that's at the peak of their powers. Purple Rain by Prince, Highway 61 Revisited by Dylan. Those are really worth exploring and taking a really hard look at. The other ones are ones like this, where it's the first time an artist really figures out what they are, who they are, and really puts it all together. Maybe it's not necessarily their best, but it's, they're on the way. The trajectory is all the way up, and they know where they're going.
Speaking of the band and its lineup, we lost Matt. So Matt just had a power outage, so that's why he looks very scary right now, but we've decided to keep on rolling. And we were talking about members of the band, which is a good segue, which Matt's power outage ruined for me, by the way, to go into 10th Avenue Freeze Out, which took me a few lessons to realize it was about the E Street Band, maybe their formation. I'll just kick off with that one already, because for someone, like, the big thing to appreciate about Bruce is the lyrics. I have no idea what any of this means in 10th Avenue Freeze Out. It does seem to be about the formation of the band, and people might be wondering if it violates what I'm going to dub the Huey rule, which is, does Jacob dislike songs about rock and roll? And it doesn't, because it's so opaque and you can't really figure out what it is about. I do like when Bruce sings "I'm on my own" and he wails it. He kind of sounds like Roy Orbison, and Orbison got a name drop in the previous song. A little connection I liked. I will say it doesn't have a chorus, but it does stick with you because they do say 10th Avenue Freeze Out over and over and over again. It still isn't very high on my ranking, though. It is a number 6 for me. Matt?
Wow. Yeah, I think this song is going to be the most polarizing. I don't think you could put this really in the middle. I think either you really like it or you really don't. The thing is, I really like it, but I like a lot of songs in this album, and this was going to be one of them that it was either going to be in my top 3 or just slightly off my top 3. And I had to really look at myself in the mirror and be like, I love this song. It's in my top 3. So yes, it did crack my top 3. And obviously this is one of the hits off there was 2 singles off this album, right? Born to Run and this song. And it's got, it's awesome. Once again, I'm going to say Roy Bittan over and over. I'll just call him the Professor because that's his nickname, but just amazing piano playing throughout, little fills in between the lyrics. You've got the great saxophone of Clarence Clemens, and you've got the Brecker brothers. You've got Michael and Randy Brecker. I believe, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Steven Van Zandt did the horn arrangements for this song, and that's like his contribution to this album.
You may be right there. I'm not entirely sure. I know he did not play a lot of guitar or mandolin or some of the other stringed instruments that he did come along with later on, but he was more behind the scenes than actually playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, like Jacob said, an origin song. You know, the Bad Scooters, obviously Bruce, the big man is Clarence, and it's like a story of the formation of the band. But even Bruce has said, like, this whole idea of when he's been asked, like, what does 10th Avenue Freeze Out means? He's like, I don't know. Just a lyric I came up with. He may have known at the time, but he can't seem to recall what that means anymore. But yeah, it's a top 3 for me just because it's so different from every other song. It's short, it's snappy, it's upbeat, makes you feel good, it's energetic, it's produced really well too. These first 2 songs, man, Thunder Road and 10th Avenue Freeze Out have a production quality that's not overdone, like Jesse was saying, with the kitchen sink and everything. Yes, there are horns and stuff in this song, but it's clean. It's got a clean sound to it. It doesn't have this Phil Spector wall of sound that you get in a lot of other songs.
Yeah, the first words I wrote in my notes was toe tapper, because that's what this is. I mean, just the driving beat that just brings you in and keeps you going through the whole thing. And yeah, polarizing is probably a good word, Matt, that you use for this one, as far as, this is probably one of those songs where you can separate the really deep into it Springsteen fans versus the ones that are kind of novices and just kind of come along, because it is, and it gets back again to separating the reality from the mythology. It is about the formation of the band, and apparently this stormy night on the Jersey Shore back in the early 70s when Bruce met Clarence Clemens, and to hear Bruce tell the story, the second that Clarence opened the door, not unlike what has happened to Matt, there was such a strong thunderclap and gust of wind that the door itself came off the hinges and the power in the club went out.
Wow.
And so it was to them a signal that they were supposed to work together on their rock and roll journey. But yeah, again, like you said, opaque, kind of vague with what they kind of get into, but it's still a crowd pleaser. It is just outside of my top 3. I have it at number 4. I probably wavered on whether to put it into the top 3, and then kind of had to sit back and ask myself if I was looking at it that way just because it was their opener when I saw them in Des Moines. It is very much if you go see Bruce live, this is one of the main set pieces of their show. It's either an opener or it's an encore or it's somewhere in the middle. Like if you listen to the live at Madison Square Garden discs from 99, 2000, when they hadn't toured together in a while, they stretched this song out to something like 18, 19 minutes, and it's where Bruce introduces the band and goes through the whole lineup and has a little nickname or a little story about every one of them. So when you kind of pull yourself back from that, it's just like, okay, I maybe crack the top 3, but it's just on the outside for me at number 4.
Again, I like the song. I just liked 5 tracks more. going to track 3, who wants to speak about Night? Does anyone have a strong case to make about Night? Matt.
So this is a song that I've always really liked, and it's the shortest song on the album. It just is right at 3 minutes. And I was playing trivia last Wednesday, and I was telling one of my trivia buddies that we were going to be reviewing Born to Run. And he understands the concept of this because he's watched a few of the episodes, and he said, well, Night's your number one, right? I was taken aback. I'm like, really? I've never heard, I didn't realize that people put that song in that higher regards. He's like, oh, it's by far the best song on that album. And he kind of made me feel like an idiot because as it is, and I love the song, it's my number 6. But what I have to say about it is that, you know, it's high energy and it packs a punch. Here's where the production issues for me though start. So there are a couple songs, and I don't know the history of the recording of this album, but to me it sounds like, I think Born to Run obviously was recorded in a session by itself before these other songs were recorded. But for whatever reason, Night and Backstreets, tracks 3 and 4, sound like they were recorded with cheap equipment. They don't sound as, yes, they do have all the Phil Spector things going on, and maybe it just like overrode the system because there's the kitchen sink on these songs, but you can barely understand his voice. You can tell that he's singing the hell out of the song, but like, if I wasn't looking at lyrics on this song, it just sounds like, it's just really muddy to me. And I could say the same for Backstreets, so I'll just say that now. But other than that, it's got such a hook to it, and I know this song is a live favorite. I mean, when they play this song live, this gets a huge ovation for a reason. But it's 6 for me, and I hate saying that because I love it. But I know somebody who has their number one.
Someone out there.
Someone up there, yep.
Jesse?
Yeah, apparently there are fans of this song. I would not have known that either. And I've got it number 8. Yeah, I'm going to repeat a lot of what Matt said. And I put that in my notes. Is that it feels like a draft of Born to Run, the single that just wasn't quite there. You know, it does still have its merits. Yeah, it's very bouncy. I can see, you know, it being a bit of a favorite, not just at live shows, but also back in the day when they were kind of workshopping this at some of the clubs on the Jersey Shore. But it's just, when you stack it up against the rest of this album, it just doesn't really hold a candle to what else we've already discussed and what we will discuss. And you know, it doesn't have a great focus either. The other thing that I wrote in my notes is that it's kind of all over the place. Like I'm going to guess, just because I do know a little bit about the history of the recording of the Born to Run track, that was the one that was added last. That was, you know, that proverbial, they turned it in and the producer said, you don't have a single, and they went back and redid it. So I have to imagine this was done earlier in the session, and they kind of went back and said, okay, what's something that we can tweak that we weren't quite there, but we can use as a basis? And that's kind of what it feels like is the manner of how this song made it onto the album.
So I'll be quick. It's my number 7. There are probably 3 tracks about the exact same thing as this, like, you know, and this is the weakest one. So that's where it's at. It's also the first one where the saxophone is annoying to me. And I know there's saxophone fans watching this or in this panel or whatever, but a lot of this rock sax that is throughout the album is just like honkity honk 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 honk, maybe in a rhythmic style. Sometimes it works. I don't think it works in Night. It's just too much honkity honk. And there's one track I like less than this one, and I don't think that one has any saxophone. So this might be the one that I liked the saxophone the least in. After Night is Backstreets. Matt already mentioned the production. I will take I'm not going to defend the production of it, but I actually love the opening to Backstreets. The piano and the organ. And of the lyrics, I mentioned 3 songs being of similar subject matter. This one, again, about poor kids living on the back streets, but it's different enough. It's about what I interpreted as 2 guys being friends, and it's a very sad song. I really liked it. It is in my top 3. If I had to say one more thing I like about it, I really love how he just says Backstreets at the very end. It's just him repeating it over and over and over, living on the back streets, but he finds a variation, and it could be humorous in the way it's repeated, but he finds a different intonation each way, and he sells it. And I was not thinking it would be one of my favorites. It is Backstreets. Anyone else have anything to say about it?
That's funny how your favorite part of the song is actually my least favorite part.
I don't know if it's the intro is my favorite.
Yeah.
My second favorite part is I like the book ending of it, and I like the meat in the middle. But it's a very nice bread used to make the Backstreet sandwich.
I love this song. I mean, this is the mini epic of the album, clocking in at 6.5 minutes, and love the intro, like you said. Anything piano related, I love. So Danny Federici, the organist for the E Street Band, only plays actually on one song on this album. So whenever you hear organ, it's the professor. He's playing both piano and organ. The only song Danny Federici plays on this album is the organ on Born to Run. And you can tell that his tone, the organ tone, the Hammond B3, is a lot different than when Roy Bittan plays the organ. And I prefer Danny Federici. I mean, that's his specialty instrument. Roy Bittan does a serviceable job. But yeah, the piano really shines. But my favorite part of this song is the recapitulation of the piano with Gary Tallent's fantastic bass playing. This song has the best bass playing of any song on this album. It's about 4 minutes into the song when the piano and bass come back together and the bass syncopates on the piano's part before Bruce comes back on singing Backstreets 1,000 times. Love that part. So uplifting, so powerful. And honestly, it could end right there for me. A little bit of Backstreets at the end is okay, but
I don't know. It's kind of like Sideshow Bob tripping on the rakes. It stops being funny at one point, and then he steps on another rake, and it's hilarious again. Backstreets. I think. Okay, I don't want. In case it's picked on the wheel, I'll save that. But where's it ranked for you, Matt? 5.
And it would rank higher probably if it wasn't for the production. It has that similar kind of. Like Night, it has that kind of muddy production sound to it at times. When it's just the piano, it's pretty clean sounding, but when the whole kitchen sink gets dropped in, it doesn't have the clarity. The lyrics don't really pop to me like some of the other songs. So I love it though, absolutely love it. But it's 5.
For you, Jesse?
I've got it at number 5 also. I would agree with a lot of what's been said. I would, I had in my notes. That's another great showpiece for Roy Bittan. And Matt mentioned the runtime. And there's part of me that almost wonders is if, they had like so many of the pieces put together instrumentally, and Bruce just whiffed on coming up with another verse. And he was just like, well, I want to let all the guys have their moment, so I'm just going to repeat the title of the song a bunch of times, and that'll stretch us out. It's fine. It'll be fine. It's fine. Because that's kind of what it feels like. It feels a little bit long. From a lyric standpoint, not necessarily from an instrumentation standpoint. So, I've got it at number 5. Matt touched on the production aspect of it, and I wrote down that it's kind of a toe in the water into that wall of sound style that we'll get really next with the title track, Born to Run. So I have to imagine it was recorded prior to that one when they really started to kind of lean in that direction. And number 5 for me. I know it's a favorite of a lot of Bruce fans. I think his fan club website is called backstreets.com. Like that's the exclusive or whatever. So that's, I know there are a lot of people that are big fans of it, but that's where it is for me. It's behind, obviously my top 3 and number 4, which I had as 10th Avenue.
So, Matt, it's a little blurry. Can you just tell us what the sticker says?
Yeah, I try to save the hype stickers when I can. Sometimes you peel them off and they rip, and then I don't save them. But it says, including the hits, Thunder Road, Born in the USA, or excuse me, gosh, that's the second time I've said that blunder. Born to Run, Jungleland, and Backstreet. So apparently they think highly of enough to have that on the hype sticker.
Yeah, it made their top 4 anyway.
Yeah.
So we're on to side B now. Born to Run. Anyone have anything bad to say about Born to Run? It's like oxygen. It's like oxygen. I'm worried. Like
if you do, you can just get the hell out right now.
I'm worried that I'm rating it too low just because I've just heard it so damn much that it's not special to me anymore. That's always my fear with these like signature songs. If I had to ding it, it's less poetic than Thunder Road. So it being about very much the same stuff, but still some, and I also don't care for the sax solo. But I love that opening riff. Because that's the honk 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 the honk 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 the honk 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 the honk 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 honk. Yeah, sorry, Clarence.
That sounded like a yakety sax from the
It is
there.
That's all it sounds like to me. Is yakety sax. It might as well be Benny Hill running around the stage with Courtney Cox, while the rest of the band is rocking out. Sorry, Clarence.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's a very valid opinion, but
it's wrong.
If there is a middle school or junior high band teacher out there that has a kid considering quitting the saxophone and they don't play this album for them, they should be fired on the spot. It's like, yeah, you're not there yet, but this is what it can be. This is why you should stick it out. And as somebody that played the saxophone for about 4 months, nobody ever did that for me, and I could have been Duke Silver. But anyway, that's stretching into a different fandom. This is the signature song was a phrase that you used, Jacob, and that's what it is. Like, even people that could not name a single member of the E Street Band or a single other one of Bruce's albums, you put this song on and they know this is Bruce Springsteen. Like, it's just that connected. And I don't want to get you guys into a ratings trouble on YouTube, but this is a masterpiece. It really is. It just is. This is the Bruce Springsteen that we would all come to know and either love or put up with, depending on your point of view. So in the bridge, the bridge is just, that's one of the, if there's a better 90 seconds of like post Beatles rock and roll that has ever been put together, I'd argue with you that there hasn't. Like that's just the best.
Anything to add, Matt?
So is it cracking both of your top threes? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So here's my dilemma. I told you like 10th Avenue was going to be that fringe, and it actually pushed Born to Run out. So unfortunately, I had to put Born to Run at number 4, and it was painful, man, because it's classic. And Jesse, you took the words right out of my mouth. My favorite part of the song is that descending bridge. Dan, 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 dan. Oh man, I love that. I mean, the iconic saxophone solo. I think it's great. I even love the glockenspiel. So a lot of these songs have the glockenspiel. Danny Federici is known to have that glockenspiel machine actually on top of his organ that he plays on live. Well, he played live when he was alive, and I don't really like the glockenspiel. It's got that super trebly, like dog whistly sound that I generally find annoying, and that's a Phil Spector trademark. If you ever listen to any of those girl groups like the Ronettes and stuff, you always hear that glockenspiel. And of course, Brian Wilson loved the glockenspiel too. I don't particularly like that instrument, but on this song, it's fantastic. And like I said, the organ that Danny Federici does when he does the glissando, that whoa, how he builds it up from the lowest end of the instrument and he just slides his wrist right across the keys and lands on that chord. It is religious, man. It is a thing of beauty. I just like 3 other songs better than it. And
like you said, that section, it's just goosebumps every time. Like, I've heard this song 5,000 times, and every time I really intently listen to that section of the song, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You just can't help it. It's what they were aiming for, and they hit it, because Bruce has even said this is his 3rd album. And it was the end of a 3-album deal with Columbia, and he had not reached the heights that he or they wanted. And so he has said that this was, the last track that they put together, and it was, he was going to throw everything at it. Like, it was not, if it didn't make it, it wasn't going to be for a lack of effort. Like, this was his all out, everything against the wall, last ditch effort to try to make the perfect rock and roll song. And I'd say he came damn close.
I wonder if we'll have as much to say about the next track which is She's the One.
I don't think we will.
I will say, for as someone who someone mentioned Tunnel of Love earlier, that kind of 80s production. That's the kind of the Bruce that I liked before I, really dedicated myself to this album. I like Tunnel of Love. I like that song on the Jerry Maguire soundtrack, Secret Garden, I think it's called. Like that kind of cheesy, like synthy production. This is the one that gets closest to that, I think. It's not quite synth, it's a rhythmic piano. I'm really glad, and I apologize if they've played your venue, Jesse, that the E Street Band isn't Styx, because I think they would have really added some gilding of the lily there, and overdone that rhythmic piano. I'm sure the Piano Man has a lot more to say about that in the song. It's a song about a sexy lady. There's some sax in it, but not a lot. It's in the middle for me. I like it. 5.
So since I was directly mentioned there, I'm going to take this chance to offer my rebuttal as if this were a presidential debate. I've got it at number 7. I would agree with what Jacob has said, that it does feel a lot more like an early mid-'80s song, not just an early mid-'80s Bruce Springsteen song, but just generally that's where it feels like it's more out of, rather than from 1975. It's number 7 for me. It's also, I hate to say it's towards the bottom of the list, but there's only 8 to pick from. And there's 5 of them that I really liked, and 3 of them that I was a little, iffy on. And in defense of Styx, they did just play our venue last July 5th, and they still put on a hell of a show.
I saw Styx live. They're great. They are. But I'm also glad that they're not the backing band for Bruce Springsteen, is my point. That's my point. Matt, Piano Man, what do you have to say about this rhythmic piano? You probably have all sorts of funky little terms to use. Have you ever seen Styx live, Matt?
I have seen Styx, yes.
Did they have the bicycle piano when you saw them? What is that called? Is there a term for that?
Not exactly sure.
They play piano and they have a little bike, and they like he pedals and it does something.
I think he must have had like a Fitbit or something like that, and he was trying to get his steps in.
That makes as much sense as anything. Sorry.
It had something to do with the pedaling mechanism. Could have like propelled like a vibrato, some type of.
Yeah, that's what it did. Yeah, but I didn't know if there was a term for it. Did they have that at Five Flags?
No, but it was in the ground and spun.
Oh.
So it spun on a pivot basically. So he would go around and play it behind his back, and climbed up on top of it at times when it was not a piano heavy song, and sang from there. It was, that was a showpiece, because that was all the way over on the one side of the stage. Tommy Shaw playing guitar was all the way on the other. They had the drums up on a platform. It was quite a production. There's a whole lot of other stories I could get into with that.
Well, let's stick a pin in that for when we do Grand Illusion. We'll have
there we
you
go.
Back. All right, Matt. Sorry to dislodge us there. Where's it ranked for you?
It's 7 for me. I like that intro, that arpeggiating piano. The tone is really weird though, very kind of new wavy, or 80s just pop. But then it gets into that Bo Diddley, and the Bo Diddley beat was created by Bo Diddley. And if you're not familiar with that rhythm, it's so the piano, the guitar, the bass, the drums, they're all doing that Bo Diddley beat, and it goes, other than the little arpeggio thing at the beginning, the rest of the song is just the Bo Diddley. So I guess I prefer the introduction more than the Bo Diddley. This may be a little contrarian here. I think that this is the highlight, the unsung highlight for Clarence Clemons. Everybody talks about his solo in Jungleland. And we haven't talked about that yet, but everybody talks about his solo in Born to Run. He's got a great solo in this song. I think that's the best part of the song, honestly, because the song itself is just the Bo Diddley beat. I like it, and I can imagine live this would be a fun song, a party song. But as an album song, it's second to least favorite. So it's my number 7, just like both of you, right? Did you both put this at 7?
No, I had it at 5.
Oh, okay.
I'm beginning to question my life choices, especially since you guys have picked your bottom ones. I thought this was going to be the clear bottom. Meeting Across the River. It's my number 8.
Me too.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. So I'm not crazy. For me, it's a story song. The least. I'm trying to think of a way to say this that isn't insulting, but okay. It seems to me like a sung through part of like a musical that's a sung through musical, and they have some plot to get through. Like if you watch Rent and they talk about needing to pay the rent, and it's just a bunch of two dudes like singing and having a conversation. It's kind of like that. Yeah. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to agree with it. Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine anyone just choosing this track and putting it on. It's like, oh, it's time to go to meeting across the river town. Time to kiss the sky. All right. No. Jesse, you must have it the highest.
Yeah, I'll defend it a little bit. I have it at number 6. I don't have it at the bottom. It is, in Springsteen fan circles, it is the much maligned song on this album. And I think if you take it on itself, yeah, it kind of feels out of place. It's a little more cinematic than a lot of some of the other tracks, but to me, I put it at number 6 just because, this may go against the spirit of the discussion here. I have always felt like it's a great lead into Jungleland. I don't think you can jump right from She's the One to Jungleland. I think it would be way too much of a hard left turn, basically. So I think this is, and I don't know exactly where this was in the catalog as far as, was it always destined to be on this album? Was it a leftover from some other time? But I think when you look at it that way, I'm still not saying it's in my top 3. It's not. I have it at number 6. But through that prism as being like just that stepping stone to the big opus of Jungleland, I think it has its merits.
A chorus would have helped it. All right.
You make a point about meeting across the river. I will say something. If it's a song about the river, this is the one I prefer.
Oh, yeah. I like that song. That's one I know. I feel like every time I do this with the CD, I feel like I'm an album, a talk show host ready to introduce the band. All right, let's get to Jungleland. It's epic. Who wants to speak about it?
I'll go first. This is definitely a top 3 for me, and I mean, it's a stone cold epic. I mean, what else do you want to call it? And clocking it at 9+ minutes, you got a build up very similar to Thunder Road. It's sparse with the piano, and the piano theme is actually quite similar to that of Thunder Road. But my absolute favorite part, Jesse, you were talking about that moment in Born to Run, the bridge where the hair stands up on your neck. For me, the goosebump moment in this song is when he goes from the churches to the jails, and that organ just slams down right there. And it's not the Hammond B3 sound that we're used to hearing in this album, but it's like a church organ because he's singing about to the churches, to the jails. And it's that cathedral chapel sound. Every time that chord hits, I don't care how many times I've listened to this song, that is like a breathless musical moment for me. And then, building into the chorus to down in jungle, down, 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 which sounds just like Baba O'Reilly from Who's
I was going to
Next.
say it's a very Who-like moment, yeah.
And this is the best guitar solo on the album. This is not a real guitar-driven album. It's Clarence Clemens honking on the saxophone. It's Roy Bittan having amazing piano solos and interludes. This is Bruce's best guitar solo. I love the tone of his guitar. It's not necessarily technical, but it's just ripping, and it's just what the song needs. And you got that beautiful violin introduction that kind of juxtaposes that harmonica introduction at Thunder Road. So it creates such a beautiful bookend. And I'm sure I'm taking a lot of you guys' talking points, but this is definitely a top 3 song for me. Where in the top 3? That is the question. But who's next?
It's top 3 for me also. The word I wrote down was operatic, because it's 3 parts. It tells a story in 3 parts, and it has a couple of really well outlined characters. Barefoot Girl, Maximum Lawman, Magic Rat, you know, you can imagine who these people are. You can put yourself in that situation and just kind of go from there. I was going to talk about the guitar also. You know, he doesn't have to play it that much anymore now with Steven Van Zandt and Nils Lofgren in the band. But, you know, Bruce does not get nearly enough credit for how good of a guitar player he is. And like you said, Matt, it's not necessarily technical, but it is visceral. I mean, it makes you feel a song when he, you know, throws down some licks like that. So yeah, it is in my top 3 also. Some great lyrics. Hungry and the Haunted started a rock and roll band. You know, I mean, there's just some real interesting turns of phrase through the whole thing. And then just the you know, the height that you talked about with that section of the song, but then to bring it crashing right back down with the more depressing part about the barefoot girl turning away Magic Rat, and then it gets into the sax solo that is just it's one of Clarence's best moments through the entire discography. Yeah, it's just it's tremendous. It's a great song.
I love how you call it because West Side Story with the.
Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, I love how Jesse used the term operatic, because it really does, I think, pay homage to Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story. You know, the rumble that occurs, the fight. You know, and I just picture all of those. And you know, Bernstein did write musical theater, but he also wrote opera too. And I think you know, the theme of West Side Story is Romeo and Juliet, which is very operatic. So yeah, it's just the lyrics on this song are just out of this world too.
I have very little to add that you guys didn't say. It didn't make my top 3. It's my number 4. Got pushed out by something else just because it took me a long time to get into it, honestly, because the jamming thing. I'll try and redeem myself. It is my favorite of the sax solos in the album because it's the most melodic. I think it's not just him blatting into the horn in this track, but I like it. I mean, it's everything you guys said. But there's just 3 tracks I liked more, I guess, and I guess that's where we should go from here. I mean, Matt, you go first. Top 3.
My number 3 is 10th Avenue Freeze Out. I probably alluded to that when I was saying it. Push Born to Run Out. My number 2 and number 1, man, it was a coin flip. You know, generally speaking, less is more for me, but not in this case. I had to go Thunder Road as number 2, and number 1. Jungleland. More is more in this song. It's every second of it is not wasted. It's 9+ minutes because it needs to be. Love it. Number 1. I mean, Thunder Road's pretty close though.
Jesse.
I had Thunder Road at number 3. Jungleland was number 2, and Born to Run was number 1 for me.
Any hard calls there?
I would say that the more difficult call, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit, was with 10th Avenue Freeze Out. Was I going to make room in the top 3 for that or not? And if I was going to, what one was I going to bump for it? And I just couldn't see myself bumping one of those 3 for that song.
And lastly, I had Born to Run at number 3, feeling like I'm underrating it slightly, but just simply because I've heard it so many darn times. Backstreets, I agree with the hype sticker. It's my number 2, and Thunder Road by a mile. That's my favorite song. That's the takeaway from this. This is the song I will be listening to long after this record is back in the shelf. I will be having that in my shuffle in a playlist on my phone somewhere. Okay, so we end. This is a new thing we've done, but we're going to spin it and have a prompt for our ending discussion. It's what should be cut from the album. And normally I would say it would be my number 8, but Jesse made a really good point that you kind of need a bridge song between She's the One and Jungleland. So what I would propose, and even though I'm a fan of the song, actually no. I was going to say cut She's the One. I think you should get rid of Nights. I think you could go from 10th Avenue Freeze Out to Backstreets. You'd have a much shorter first half of the record, but I think it's the most redundant song on the record, even though it's a fine song.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Redundant's a good word, because like we said, it kind of felt like a rough draft of the title track, and it doesn't take anything away from the full album, but it doesn't really add much to it either.
Do we
Yeah.
hear here?
Even
All
though
right.
I'm higher than you guys, I agree with that logic for sure. It's poor man's version of some of the other songs, but good song though.
So I'm going to go through all the library copies I can find and cross that track out like an angry parent at a local library. Jesse, thank you so much.
Of course. I had about 4 or 5 other albums in mind when you guys initially reached out. So when you get through with all of your better guests, be sure to circle back to me.
Oh, don't worry about that. We will. We will come back to you. Thank everyone for watching. And we don't have a good close out. We don't have a sign off yet. We're still working on that. Matt, are you sing
Like
sing
and
us?
subscribe and
Oh,
like and
yeah.
subscribe and click the bell for notifications and tell people about us. If there's a music lover in your life or someone in your family, have them check this channel out and subscribe because we just kicked this channel off a couple days ago. I think we just finally hit double digits, which is all right. We've been live for a couple days, but we'd like to, hit that 100 subscriber milestone and hopefully sooner than later. So,
Yeah.
Hey, you got to find your milestones where you can. You got to take your victories where you can get them.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, everyone.